Okay, so some tips to make this a successful use. The goal here is not necessarily to see how far out at the bottom of your squat you can push, okay? Because what that can do is get a pad pattern formed where you're actually bringing the inside of your foot up and you actually end up on the outside of your foot. So we don't want to see people squatting with the inside of their feet coming up off the ground, okay? So what we recommend is kind of keeping a 3 points of contact foot position where the big toe, the outside of the foot, and the heel are all in contact. And pushing out is okay as long as we're not lifting that big toe up off the ground. And pushing out actually might provide more stability and allow more room for a deeper squat, but how far you go out is individual and just depends on the mobility and differences in the individual user, okay? So some people maybe will get very, very low and push out very, very far and keep good foot position, and that might be advantageous for them, but for someone like me, if I push out too far, my feet come off the ground and that's just not a good stable position. So as we get lower, it might be good to push out further, but only if you're keeping good foot position as well. Another thing we recommend is that we don't squat so low that our back rounds and we lose our neutral spine position. So our spine should have a slight inward curve to the low back. And as we get deeper into a squat, sometimes we'll see the user lose that neutral spine or a slight inward curve with their low back. So at the point that that happens, we probably want to stop that squat and maybe we can work on a little bit of mobility at that position to see if we can, over time, gradually get deeper and deeper without losing that. So that'll also be a good way to use the SquatGuide, is to develop the depth of your squat before you lose that neutral spine position. And then finally, another good tip to think about, and another great thing about the SquatGuide, is as I go down, I can get some visual feedback, because ideally each knee is pushed out equally. So if I look down and one hinge or one knee guide is pointed much more further out than the other, I got some work to do on my left side or vice versa. So ideally, as we go down, both knee guides are in the same position, turned out equally. And that can kind of help us identify maybe restrictions on one side or the other. And again, that's great because you don't have a coach or a physical therapist with you all the time to identify these deficiencies in your movement. And just by simply looking down, or even you'll feel it in the SquatGuide, you'll know that you have some work to do for mobility that day on one hip versus the other.